All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. The fear prayer. Dear God, please remove our fears and direct our attention to what you would have us be. Now, one of the largest promises in this book. At once, we commenced to outgrow fear. Let's have a wonderful afternoon.
As Peter gets ready to head to the podium, I'm just going to call somebody out. Chris Schroeder, I want you to know that I'm watching you. There is no chance you stay awake in that comfortable chair during this session. So don't think I'm not watching you, brother, okay? This post-lunch session is often referred to as nap time, so we understand that someone might nod off. I'm just going to pretend you're listening intently with your eyes closed, okay? But nobody will doze off during Peter's talk, but I've been known, people are told not to operate heavy machinery and listen to my CD at the same time, so.
Peter, alcoholic. And what Steve says is true. This is the most difficult session of the whole weekend. It's getting hot in here. We just had lunch, vaped, smoked, which you shouldn't do, and hung out for a while, nice long lunch, and then we come back here, and it takes a little while to get shifted into it. In fact, the prayer and little quiet time is probably most important now than early in the morning. So if you need to get up and walk around, go outside, that's fine. If you meditate while we're speaking, I'll write inventory on you tonight, don't worry. But really, just it's okay. There's been plenty of times I fly into town on a Friday, it's the early wake up, 6 o'clock flight out, fly across the country, and they like to put the speakers in the front row. And I don't like to go there because I know as soon as he says, my name is Joe, I'm an alcoholic, I start doing this. And it's happened to me. And I've had to get up and get some coffee, and you get to a point where the coffee's not even working anymore. So just make it fun and easy. We're going to do a little bit of 5 and 6 and 7. And one of the things, I'm going to get ahead of myself for a minute here. I learned about the 6 and 7 defect stuff, and for me, I look at the 7 deadly sins. And I relate it to my business, and I'll share a story with you. It kind of piggybacks off the earlier story, and I was talking to a gentleman about this during the lunch break. That any time I've taken my eye off God, off the center, lose my center, I'm in a world of calamity. I'm in a pool of sharks, if you will, and I get devoured. So what has happened to me a couple of times in the business world, the career world, is that I've never made lots of money. And there have been times where it's been, difficult to make the nut every month. And when the business you think is going to close, you have to make preparations. Maybe I need a new job. Maybe I need to go hire somewhere else. So far, so good. Hey, I might need a new job. Let me put out some feelers in case I have to close my business because I'm going to need some employment. Well, that sounds really good on the front end, except what's taking the lead? There's some responsibility behind that, but what's really leading is financial insecurity. And so what I do is I would sit in front of people who were giving me just a terrible, terrible offer, terrible deal that normally I would say, no. But because of financial insecurity and attached to money, I start to listen. And then I listen to someone else who comes across with the same deal or worse, but I'm still listening. And they're non-negotiable. And they're taking a hard line with me. But I'm still listening and negotiating because of fear of financial insecurity, which means I lost God in that transaction. I lost God in the whole thing. Conversely, Although financial hardship is not easy for anyone, if I'm in the center and I don't lose that center, I'm not going to go in like a pompous fool, and I'm going to listen. But if it's a no, and I'm okay in here, because who I am, the sense of who I be, does not come from a paycheck. Once it comes from a paycheck, I'm attached to that. When there's no paycheck, I cease to exist. There's no God in that equation. And I'm selling my soul. And that's called greed. When we talk about lust in the 7 deadly sins, first thing we think of lust, sex. No, it's a lust for power. It's a lust for control. It's a lust for money, which means I'm going to lose my soul, hurt me and others in the process. And over and over and over again, every time I came back to the center, when I say center, I mean the soul, or I didn't stray from it, even during difficult times, I stay in the saddle. But when I let the life become my master, and it has, I gotta confess, it has at times. I'm not infallible because I'm in AA. I'm a broken vessel. I said last night, subject to breakdown. Tempted. Steve talked about this. Tempted. There's a song by a band called Squeeze years ago, and the line is tempted by the fruit of another. He's talking about a man being tempted by another woman, but tempted by the fruit of the money, because I don't have a lot, and you're dangling this carrot. It's not where I want to be, but I like that. I want to. Maybe that'll fix me. And I've learned over and over and over again when we come to defects of character. You're really getting old when you put your glasses down and you have no idea where they are. I was talking to a guy I sponsor. It's a true story. And I'm sitting in my car, pull up to my house, and he rang. So keep the car running. I'm talking to him. And I normally go to my passenger seat to pick up my phone, put it in my pocket, grab my duffel bag, and home. And as I'm talking to him, I'm doing this, and there's no phone. I'm on the phone. And I'm looking under my seat, and I'm jacket. And I said, Freddie, hold on, I can't find my phone. He says, brother, you're talking to me. So I'm trying to say that's a forgetful moment, or maybe I'm just getting old. I don't know. Either way, it's not good. Okay. So my experience, my first 5th step, as well as my most recent one, which was about 2 weeks ago. Every time I'm going into a 5th step, I don't want to do it, because I know I'm about to unload and share some things that I feel are close to the vest and no one should know. I also know while I'm going in there, I have to be open to feedback, constructive criticism that I made. The ego's not going to want to hear, because that's usually in the way. The soul loves that. But the mind, the ego, the pride, you always want to hear someone say, well, I don't know about that. You do this a lot, or you seem to lean in that direction. So it's the ego about to get crushed, but the soul about to get fed. And it's vital that I do this to keep it clean, to keep the channel running nice and clean. I remember the first time I did a 5th step, I had an appointment with my sponsor, and I was thinking of all the excuses not to go, and hoping maybe he got drunk. He's on a drunk, and he'll never, things like this. And I remember praying and just get me to his house, and I went in, and we sat down, and he had the candles going again, same guy. And we prayed before we began. He read some things out of into action, step 5. And he had a notepad and pen in front of him. He had a big book. And he said to me, I might be writing some things down as you speak. Because they're going to be important as we go along. And I might stop you and ask you some questions. He says, but the format of this is you're just going to read what's on paper. Don't let me explain. You know how we do that? Resentment Joe, let me explain what happened, because I'm about to make me right. So I need to read, you stay on book, because I got to assume that's what God gave you. I still do that with men I sponsor. Just stay to the book. I'll interrupt you, or we'll talk about it, ask you some questions, and I take notes, and the notes look like this. I'm reading an inventory from maybe, might say my first inventory when I was maybe 12 years old, about something. And then here I am maybe at 25 years old. I'm older, different people, different city, different circumstance. But the common thread, here I go again with the same stuff, the same defect. Just time has passed. I have not changed. And I get to see that. It's kind of like when that guy sits in front of you, that woman sits in front of you and says, I keep meeting all these crazy people, these crazy men, crazy women, one bad date after another, one bad relationship after another. They're all nuts. Well, okay, I'll say, yeah, they probably are. But who keeps picking them? The common thread is me. I got a broken picker. Because that old thing, if there were 100 women in the room and 99 were well, had to act together, successful, grounded, spiritual, and one was Looney Tunes, that's the one I'm going for. Yeah. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? We've been trying to get a new attitude and a new relationship with my Creator. So at the beginning, I need something new, because they always don't work. I need to be convinced of that. But if I'm in here a while, a newer relationship, a newer attitude, refreshed attitude towards this power instead of getting stale. Now I see what happens, even guys in my office, did you get the new phone? I said, I have a phone that works. No, this one drives your car. The pictures are high def. You got to get this phone. We went from big phones to little phones, now they're huge again. I don't know what's going on with that. But people get the new phone. Or now they have cars that park themselves. Got to get that, because I don't know how to park anymore suddenly. So we always looking for the new gadget. Our book talks about this. The new gadget or theory that works in exchange of the old one. I'm always willing to do that. I remember having this flat screen TV, and then I walked to my old boss. I went to his house, and he had this Super Bowl-sized TV on his wall. I said, I need a bigger TV. And it seems to be clear. It's called high def. I need to get that. Super high def. I need to get that too. So I get all my money together and I go buy this thing. I need a new gadget. But when it comes to God, I'll stick with pounding drums instead of getting a telephone. I'll use smoke signals instead of getting a new phone, which is insane. But when it comes to God, I settle for mediocre. Oh, I got God, it's good. I don't need a new relationship, a new attitude. And the book is saying we're about to get a new, why wouldn't I want a new one? It's kind of like if I'm experiencing freedom, do I want to get freer? I don't know about you, when I was drunk, I like to get drunker. If I was high, I want to get higher. Give me 4. And I get really okay and comfortable and just cruise when it comes to God stuff or spiritual stuff. And I base it on, I feel comfortable, I feel okay. If spirituality doesn't touch every single area of my life, it touches none of my life. But I lose sight of that. In fact, the question I have to ask myself, am I being guided by God or the part of me that thinks it's God? The soul always seeks that which it loves, and that's more God. But the head gets in the way all the time. I've admitted certain defects. I've ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is, and I put my fingers on the weak items in my personal inventory. I start to see some things. As I'm writing, I can see some things. I can see some stuff with me. Not crystal clear yet. Hasn't come into total focus, but it's there. This requires action on my part. It says this: these are about to be cast out. The stuff that's blocking me from God. To me, a really, really, really important and powerful piece of information. About to be cast out. Not worked on, not dealt with, not embraced. Embrace your defects. I'm going to work on my defects. Good luck. Cast out like garbage. So I'm just wondering if I was in therapy for 5 years straight and then like another 2 years. If I went to one of those therapists and said to him or her, hey, listen, therapist, here's all my stuff. I'm going to pay to have you cast them out. It sounds like something really strange. And if I was maybe in a treatment center and I went to my therapist and said, here's what's wrong with me, cast it out, they would medicate me, have a staff meeting. He's delusional. My book says it's about to be cast out. I don't say that, the book says it. Because the one who's going to cast it out is not a human power, but the power. Who's had the ability to do things like this. In his way, in his time, as much as he or she wants, whatever you want to call your God. About to be cast out. So another way of looking at this, I'm walking around with one cross God puts on my back. That's my belief. And I got 4 others that I put on there. because the self will run riot. And God says, give me those other three. I got them. They're not yours to carry. Because he can do that. A human power would talk to me about how to carry 4 crosses. How to get endurance to do that. To passion to continue, carrying along. And God says, no. I gave you 1. The other 3 are yours. You got to go. And that's how I'm walking around upright, shoulder square, and head up, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. There's a great warning on the bottom of step 5. It says, if I skip this vital step, life-giving if I do, threatening if I don't, I may not overcome drinking. That's pretty clear on what I'm supposed to do. It says on page 75, when we decide who's to hear our story, wasting our time, have a written inventory. We're prepared for a long talk, however long that's going to be. Usually the partner or sponsor knows what we're about to do, that we're engaged upon a life and death there. And it's interesting, God gave another drunk the responsibility of a life and death there with one of his other kids. It's like those of us who have children, we turn our kids over to some human power and say, you're going to take care of my son or daughter in a life and death situation. Most parents grab their kids in a life and death and go and come near them. And God's saying, no, I'm going to give you to Joe and Bill's going to take care of you. It doesn't make sense. Like most of AA doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute. It's not logical. But in God's dimension, it's perfectly logical. It says we pocket our pride. We go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. And that's when I stop, and now I go into the 5th step, or my sponsor takes me in. And what's about to happen to me is the following. Either when I'm done with the 5th step, or in 6 and 7, maybe 8 and 9, I don't know. This is God's job. Some of these 5th step promises, I remember the first time I got my instructions for 6 and 7, and I was making an 8-step list, and I don't know what was happening to me, but I really felt like I wasn't touching the ground. I don't know what was going on, and it was this. It didn't happen immediately after 5. Usually when I'm done with 5, it's like, I'm done. And I feel a little bit more connected. But the skies don't open up until, for me, later. That's been my journey. It says, once having taken the step withholding nothing, this is the back end of it, I'm delighted. These are all my 5th step promises. I can look the world in the eye. I could be alone at perfect peace and ease. My fears fall from me. I begin to feel the nearness of my Creator, oneness with God. I may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now I begin to have a spiritual experience. And albeit it might be the infancy of it, but something's happening. The engine is running. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. Not that I'm non-alcoholic, but there's space between me and that thought about drinking, drink singles, drink issues. There's space. God's created space. I go to the beach. I don't think about having a beer would make it nicer. I sit down and watch a football game. I don't think of a drink would make it nicer. I'm making love. I said drugs would make it nicer. It's been removed. Step 10 is going to guarantee me that. It used to, but doesn't anymore. How is this possible? Because God could and would if he was sought, because I've been seeking. I feel I'm on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. It's connected. When I shake someone's hands, there's no break. We're connected. We were like this, and now it's like this, hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. And it gives me instructions what to do when I get home. What I want to share with you is, see, this work speaks so loudly for this power that you can't find words to really explain it, what happens to us. We tell stories, we try to find adjectives, but it really doesn't do it justice. So as I said a few times with you guys, I'm a cradle Catholic, and I was one of these guys who would go to what we call Mass and not go and not go. AA's my church. These people don't have it right. I go in there, listen to the homily, and says, they could have picked me to do this. That's a 3rd step. I can do this. or the priest didn't do it right. I listened to that. I remember one time they sang the Lord's Prayer. I said, oh my God, this is a mortal sin. You don't sing the Lord's Prayer. What kind of it's a folk mass? What is going on in here? And I look at people, you're sitting in the pew and someone's on their phone like, we don't do that in here. I'm going, blasphemy. I'm better than, and I'd leave. Then I go back and I was doing this. Always praying. I never had a problem with the carpenter. And then I heard, we get caught up in some of the headlines about some of the bad things going on. And I use that as wholesale condemnation. So now I'm not going. And I felt justified with that kind of resentment. And here's what happened. I write my fourth step, comes to institutions. I write down Catholic Church, cause. Third and fourth column. I sit down in step 5. And I'm getting to institutions, and I'm reading to my sponsor, okay, I have institutions, keep reading. Institutions, resentment, Catholic Church, cause. Here's my third column. I'm just blowing right through it. Very matter of fact, he says, back up, which is sponsor code for you're in trouble. Back up. And he says, how long have you been nursing that one? Because he saw me trying to blow right through it. And I pushed back. I said to him, well, Mickey, I says, think about it. And here's my explanation. And he gave me another consideration. I pushed back again. Then he said this to me. This all comes out of 4 and 5 and fixed in 9. Because they all lead into the other one. One leads into the next, I should say. So he asked me some questions. He said to me, do you go to AA meetings? I was insulted with the question. I said, of course I do. He says, is every AA meeting a good meeting? I said, no. Are there 13 steppers in AA? I said, yeah. Have you ever known anyone to take a chip, a coin, who you knew was loaded? I said, yeah, I remember my old home group. Guy was nodding out at the table, taking a 1-year chip. And he went on and on with these considerations. And I kept saying, yeah, I keep going. He said, you keep going back and practice love, tolerance, forgiveness, acceptance, spiritual principles, bring the solution, forgive them because they're still sick, and says, yeah, I do all that. And then he said, how come you can't do that with your church? Now I'm caught. That doesn't feel good. There was silence on the phone because I knew he was right. He said, I'd like you to go, but I can't tell you to go. But you need to clean this up first. You have poison in your soul that you've been nurturing for the longest time. Are you telling me that one resentment doesn't bleed into other areas of your life and begets other resentments? And he was right. So I finished the 5th step with him, and that was one of the first things I put on my harms list. So what we have is something called confession. I talked about this earlier, and I went in there, and I sat down with the priest, and I says, here's why I'm here. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. This was my 9th step. I'm also a Catholic. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I do something called an inventory. And what I came up with is I've been harmful to the church, and here's what I've done. I've gossiped and slandered, and it went on and on and on. And I'm here to make it right. And he said to me, usually they give you absolution, some penance, and out the door. That's been my experience. He said this to me. And it caught my attention because this is the first time. He said, I understand. So now I'm leaning in. And he went on, he spoke to me for about 5 or 7 minutes. And he wasn't like, you're a bad person and the Lord, we had a conversation. He knew what I was getting at. He didn't give me consideration. He just talked to me. Almost like a father talking to a son who's losing his way a little bit. It wasn't looking down on him. I says, what can I do to make this right? He gave me some penance, as they usually do. What can I do to make it right? He says, can you come to Mass tomorrow morning? That would be okay. I said, okay, fine. I'm still thinking, one Mass, I'm off the hook. Sunday morning rolls around. I says, Marion, here's what you need to, can you come with me to Mass? He knew I was going in there to make this amends. We parked the car. It's a church right in my town. I've been there a few times, and I walk in, and suddenly I'm noticing something different. My point of view was changed because I didn't plan this, but as I'm walking towards the front doors, I notice all these people. I'm noticing families walking in, couples walking in. I'm noticing they seem to be excited. and there's something going on with them, like it's mass time. We're going to go in there. And it seemed to be a cool thing to be doing all of a sudden, not begrudgingly because I feel guilty if I don't, I'm going to burn in hell if I don't. There was a different rhythm to it. And my chest is pounding. And I'm a little nervous, and I hear the bells. And we walk in, and I sit in the back row like when I was new in AA, the last row. And I'm sitting back there, and I'm, if you're not a Catholic, let me tell you, we do aerobics in Mass. What we do is we kneel, we sit, we stand. No, we're kneeling. Okay, we're jumping up. What are we doing now? I don't know the cues yet. And there's a lot of talking and replies, responsible, no, we reply. I can't even think of the word. These hymns you say. He says one thing, you say no. I don't know it. So I'm listening. But something's going on, and I'm feeling okay about this whole thing. And when the priest did his homily, I wasn't critical. I'm listening with the ears on the soul, not the ears over here. About 2/3 of the way through, they do the Lord's Prayer. Now, this is way before COVID, so we all held hands. Everyone holds hands. And they sang the Lord's Prayer, and suddenly it was music to my soul. I loved it. I know the Lord's Prayer. I learned it in here. That's part I knew. And we're holding hands, and everyone's singing the Lord's Prayer, and the waterworks start. And Marion's to my left, and I don't want her to see me crying. And I peek over, and she's crying. What happened to me? I went home. It's something my soul needed, and I was fighting it and justifying not going and all of this stuff. And 4 and 5 just blew that apart. Blew the ego out of the water. It starved the ego and gave me soul food. What has happened to me because of that, I become a member in good standing in my church. I served as a lector and a Eucharistic minister for a number of years. Right up until COVID, actually. And on Sundays, I love to go to morning Mass. Our thing is 6 o'clock. We love the 6 o'clock Mass. I never liked 6 o'clock. I love 6 o'clock Mass. I fell in love with this one priest where we have a relationship. One of my dreams was I see these people talking to priests like they're friends, a confidant, a go-to. How do you do that? We have one. And in turn, what has happened, 10 and 11, my whole walk, but 10 and 11 has changed completely. It's changed completely. Not perfect, but changed so much for the better. My relationship with this power called God. And I've learned stuff about it. I learned about my religion, and it's enhanced the spiritual walk. My prayers sound different. My point of view has changed. As the book by Chuck C., I've given a new pair of glasses. I didn't realize how foggy or smudged they were until this work did what it had to do. And it took what it took. I think I was sober. It was a number of years, I don't recall, but I was sober double digits before this thing happened. So when someone comes to me with the step 5, I can't just assume it's just going to be a bunch of resentment, fear, and sex, and let's get on with this. Because what I've learned from my own experience, Joe shows up with this much inventory. Or I write that much inventory. Or maybe just a few sheets of inventory. And all of those inventories, when I'm hearing them or he's listening to me, are important. Everyone's important. Because I have to write all of those to get to the one thing, perhaps, out of all those inventories, that might be one entry that unlocks the gates of hell. I just don't know it while I'm writing it, and I don't know which one it is while they're sharing it with me. Neither one of us know. But 9 out of 10 times my experience has been there's one piece that Joe or Bill or Frank is going to share with me, or I'm going to share with my sponsor, that you go, oh my God. It's that one piece. It is a life and death errand. And then you watch. I was doing, this guy, I can use his, he gave me permission to use his name, guy in Staten Island, this guy Carl. And I call him, I used to call him Joey Loopholes, because he was always looking for a loophole, And this guy, I would give him a consideration, yeah, but how about this? And he was always doing that. And he came to my house, and we sat down, we're starting the 5th step, and right off the rip, he's saying, yeah, but let me explain. yeah, but this, and yeah, but that, and how about that? Wasn't the book say this? And after an hour of this, I'm sweating blood, basically. You know. And I said, Carl, we need to take a break. And in my living room, I had like what they call like a half bathroom off on the side. And I go in there not to use the restroom, throw cold water on my face and the back of my neck. I'm about to have a nervous breakdown. I don't know what to do with this guy. I get on my knees by the sink and I start praying, God, I don't know what to do with this. I'm about to send him home. I'm going nowhere. And I'm talking to God, give me something to help this guy. Get up off my knees. Nothing's coming to me. I don't know what to do. I sit down and I'm looking at him and he's looking at me and I don't know what to do. And what comes out of my mouth, God held it to the last minute. I say this to him. I said, Carl, all I want you to do from here on out is just read your 4th column. That is it. I thought the AA police were going to show up to my house, the SWAT team. The tradition Nazis were going to show up, or and he thought I was Looney Tunes. He gave me that glazed look like, what? I just read your 4th, this is what just get your 4th column. Just read your 4th column. He reluctantly agrees. Selfish, dishonest, seeking, frightened. Selfish, dishonest, seeking, frightened. Turn the page, turn the page, turn the page. And then something happened. Again, it's hard to describe this. You know when a new guy's come or a new woman's come into your group and you see them? And then one day they're there and you know they showed up. There's something different. It's the eyes. You got here. In my business, I see them coming out of detox. The body's there. You see them in the lectures. And then maybe 3 weeks later, you got here. You just got here. It's the eyes. Something about it. The windows to the soul. And that's what happened to him, as if he was split wide open. The rest of the inventory changed, and so did he. Because he started walking around meetings with a big book on his arm looking to sponsor anyone in his drive-by sponsorship. Anyone who wanted to work, I'll volunteer, I'll help him. And I saw him probably 2 years ago in Staten Island, New York. He's still lit up. He's all in. He was kind of on the outside of AA for a long time, and he's all in. That's what happens in this work when the soul is allowed to breathe, if you will. And it's not under the weight of me and my defects of character, the 7 deadly sins. And so I finish this and I get quiet for an hour. And it gives me some instructions on what to do for that hour, which means I'm not going on Facebook and saying, just did a 5th step and taking a selfie and trying to get likes. Have you seen this? Yeah? Well, I know what the sponsors are. I'm not putting headphones on and listening to Metallica during the hour quiet time. It's just me and God, which makes a lot of us uncomfortable. You mean just like meditation? I review the first 5 proposals. I just get quiet. Anything I missed. Sometimes we take it to the grave stuff we don't share. And sometimes during that hour we'll go, I just remembered something. We'll see what surfaces. Third or fourth time through the work, I get the hour quiet time. And I've always heard the expression, experience the death of self is successful living. I understood it intellectually, but I had no experience with it. And I get in the hour quiet time, and I did all the instructions, and I'm waiting for the hour to finish so I can move into 6 and then 7. And I remember feeling uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable. I was starting to get anxious, like not feeling okay. And then I started to go through my life again, and I went into morbid reflection. I started to question my sponsor. Who is this guy? He's from Texas. He's not from New York. He doesn't understand the rhythm of New York. You turn your whole life as some cowboy? And who is this God guy? I mean, how long have you been praying? You haven't hit lottery yet. When is this thing going to change? Questioning everything. I'm making fun of it, but I was just questioning everything. My life, everything. It was as if somebody picked up a basket of fruit and threw it up in the air and it just landed all over the room. And I remember feeling frightened. And I remember thinking, God, please, if you're out there, take me from this. I'm in trouble here. It got so uncomfortable. I went to the phone before the hour was up, and I called my sponsor. And he said, "Money, what's shaking? You done with the eye?" He says, "No, here's what's going on." And he said this, "It sounds to me like you're having an experience," and hung up the phone. That's the feedback I got. Now I hated him more at that point. And I went back and finished the hour and did 6 and 7. He called me. And he said, "You know what was happening to you." He said, "We've talked about experience the death of self before the physical death. Who said it's going to be pleasant?" It's a questioning, it's a feeling it, it's doubting, it's everything is left is right and right is left. And you realize at some point that anything you put your hands on has never worked. I got it. He says, and he used the Dotson and the Bill Wilson and Silky example. He says, as the story goes, Silky walked in and saw Bill having this experiences. He didn't say, "Bill, let's talk about this. Maybe you need some medication. We'll have a staff meeting." He just left him alone. My sponsor left me alone. The next morning, my ex-wife, who had been gone for 4 days, came back drunk, coked up, in the same clothes. God knows where she was. Normally that would be a fight. My manhood was at stake right now. My wife's been gone. God knows where she was, who she slept with. I got to make a stand here. I got to make a fight. Not to win the arguments. Manhood's at stake. And I got to show I can keep my woman. Any other weekend, that would have been a huge fight. And when she walked in, I was hurt. I was crushed. But my eyes saw something different. My eyes saw us. It hurts. It's my wife. It's a lost soul. And the marriage is now over. I know this. But I didn't rant, I didn't bark, I didn't scream. How could you do this to me? I saw a sick and suffering alcoholic and addict, and that's all I was capable of doing too. I ruined tons of relationships. That's what I do. That's what she did. And over the years, I tried to place her in about a half a dozen treatment centers. She AMA'd every other one, and last report, she's still drinking, this poor soul. But I was given new eyes and new ears to hear. That came out of 4, 5, 6, and 7. 2 very big turning points in my life. And I still do none of this perfect. And I'm going to turn this over to Steve, but there's one line I want to talk about in 6. It says, "Can he now take them all, every one?" After the hour, we go to God and we ask him, "Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things we have admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one?" Is my God big enough yet? Do I believe he can take, am I willing to give him my whole life again? Because we examined 3 and 7, they look similar. And there's an amen at the end of 7. Can he now take them all, every one? Here's how I saw this one day. So let's pretend I'm getting ready to set up this conference like Bill did. And I'm walking through the parking lot, and I have a bunch of big books and this podium, and I'm dragging it along, and the keys are in my teeth. And you're sitting up here watching this, and everything falls out of my arms. And I pick it up again, and I try it again, and again I trip and fall. It's too much weight. And someone says, "Hey, Pete, let me take that off you." "No, I got it. I'm good. Because I'm the hero. Put the keys on my mouth, the podium, and the books, and I'm walking, and they fall again. And finally, Steve sees me and says, "Can I take them off you now? Are you done?" And I look at that question as if God is saying, "Can I take this stuff from you now? It's killing you. Are you done?" I willingly take all of that from you because I have work for you to do, and you don't have time carrying more stuff. There's enough stuff to carry. I need you free enough to go spot the drunk and go spend time with them, because he's or she's my kid too. How could I possibly be of maximum service to anyone if I'm consumed with me and feeding these defects all day long? Whether I'm aware of it or not, being tempted constantly in the ping pong match in my head all day long. I need to be free. How free is what I put in and what God's about to give me. Because when I'm sober, physically sober, it doesn't mean I'm non-alcoholic. Defects start to feed on this. Don't go to that meeting. Lust is okay. Greed is okay. Slothfulness is okay. I went to 4 meetings. I could hang out for a week. Because slothful is just not only lazy at work, slothful is spiritually slothful. Anger blocks any path into reconciliation. It insists that I'm right. It takes a side. How can I possibly have a life of contemplation, be contemplative, if I'm taking a side and it's me against you? And right now it's seductive what's going on out there. Left against right. It's so seductive. Take a side. They're rioting in the streets over some decision. It's so easy to get into this, and yet I'm going to come in today and tell you how spiritual I am. I am the biggest hypocrite out of everyone. I need to take a look at this, a good hard look at the stuff that was revealed to me, and am I willing to turn it all over? God, please take me like the wretch I am, the sinner I am. And you do with me as you see fit. Whatever that is, wherever you move me, wherever you put me, it has to be better than what I come up with. Because I come up with at some point drunk. That's what I do. And I speak for myself, if I lost sight of the fact that I will never get drunk again, I'm in serious trouble. I'm alcoholic, I drink. My disease doesn't care. I just made 34. Not impressed. And if I think that'll never happen to me, I'll never drink, I'll never smoke weed, I'll never eat pills, I got this, I'm closer to a drink than you could imagine. So I chop wood and carry water, chop wood and carry water. And I close that body of work up with 7. I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Thank you, Peter, and good afternoon, everyone. Steve, alcoholic. There's a couple of things I also want to backtrack, and I will tell you, have you ever noticed, I know where you guys are sitting, that this session, I've got, I think, 25 minutes here, and have you ever noticed how long 25 minutes is when you're listening and how short it is when you're talking? It just, you'll be ready, you'll be done before I am, but that's okay. You know, as we move into 6 and 7, and I'll talk about 5, 6, and 7, but it says that fear is the chief activator of all my defects of character. And when I say we look for our motives, a motive is something that moves you to action. And fear moves me to action or sometimes to inaction. But when I was talking about the fear inventory, there was a small piece that's an important piece to me that I didn't share. And when it says we ask ourselves why we have these fears, and it says, isn't because self-reliance failed us, self fails me. And it says, but we're living on a different basis. We think there's a better way than self. And well, what is that basis? Well, it's trust in infinite God rather than our finite selves. And that basis is actually that third step that I took, again, just a few pages before. But what does self-reliance mean in relationship to my fears? And for me, I've arrived at that it means something's going to be TOO something. I'm going to be too afraid. I'm going to be too old. I'm going to be too embarrassed. I'm going to be too poor. I'm going to be too lonely. I'm going to be too something. It's going to be more than I can handle. And the book says, you're right. You're right. So we're trusting infinite God rather than my finite self. And that's when those fears, until I find myself regularly, I know what's on the page. I can quote most of that page to you, but it is not uncommon for me to turn to that page, page 68, during the day or at a time when I'm feeling fears, because there's something different for me when I look on the page than when I just think about what I remember. And when I consciously and intentionally invite God into that, and I begin to get, it's sort of like if you've ever been, when my daughter was little, and you get that first, every parent at one point has gotten that first swing set for your kid, right? You bring that thing home and open, there are 3,000 parts to this thing, right? And I'm not a do-it-yourself guy. I'm in the backyard trying to get this thing going, and I am in over my head. And I look up, and my neighbor, who built his own 3-deck, outside deck, 3 levels, power tools on Saturday morning at 6 in the morning. I've hated this guy for years at the time, but I saw him walking toward me, and I felt instantly better because I knew he knew how to handle this thing. And often that happens when I invite God in. I can feel instantly better because, oh yeah, I've been flying solo. You're in the game. I've done that inventory, and Peter talked. I have to say that you mentioned something, Peter, that is exactly my experience. That, my first few years sober, if you brought your fourth step to me to do a fifth step, the odds were good that I was going to talk more than you. That's not a good recipe for a fifth step, right? I would all of a sudden, because I got something to say about that. I got something to say about what you just said. And today I will tell you at not 33, but 32 years sober, that, and I can't wait till I'm 34, because you can see the gap in growth here. It's unbelievable. My wife, her sobriety date's 10 days after mine, and whenever there's a little argument at our house, I'll go, just wait 10 days, baby. This will clear up for you. And wish you could see what I can see from the spiritual mountaintop. But so I can't wait. But it says in that fifth step that if we've been thorough, around the fourth step, at the end of that chapter, the fourth step, if I've been thorough, I'll have written down a lot. I will have begun to comprehend the futility and fatality of life if I've been living it. I will see the harm I've caused others and be willing to make right those mistakes. I will have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about myself. That's before the fifth step. That's the experience that's available to me in the inventory that was written by me for me. The inventory is not written for somebody else. And then what I do in a perfect world is go share that, the humility that is attached to me going and telling someone else what I discovered about me. And then there may be some back and forth. There may be some input, as the 12 and 12 talks about, or we may reveal something of ourselves to help make that connection that you're not alone. But the first thing I want to do these days is honor the work that the man has done rather than stop. Come here, I'm here to listen. That's the number one role, I believe, of the sponsor or whomever is listening to that fifth step. I'm here to listen. And it talks about that being an act of humility when I'm going to admit to God, myself, God, and another human being. And what happens in that process when I, as the person doing the fifth step, when I share those things that either I had not known before I started, or that I was not willing and had not shared with anybody else until this time, what happens is I get more connected to you. When it says that sense of isolation will begin to disappear. And I think that's because the things that I think are different about me actually are the things that make us alike. The circumstances are often different, but the human condition is not that different. And I have found that when I have been willing to bear myself in front of you, whether it's at an event like this, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's over coffee, or whether it's me sharing inventory, that the thing that I was most concerned about sharing with you usually turn out to be the things that draw us closest together. And where we find the connection, where there had been disconnection, and that loneliness that made me feel different begins to disappear. That sense of isolation begins to disappear. So and over the years, I've become more and more willing to share more and more. As I've probably shared more here than you wanted to hear today, but so, and then I think 6 and 7 are sort of like the now what steps, right? I got all this information, now what? Because otherwise I am just more acquainted with my problem than I've ever been. I have gathered all the information. And the book says now with this newfound information about ourselves, what are we to do? And it's interesting, at least to me, and we often talk about it, that steps 6 and 7 are those 2 paragraphs in the book, seemingly pretty brief references to steps 6 and 7. And then the 12 and 12, they're two of the longer chapters. And I don't think it's because anything was left out. I believe that the directions on how to do, the action to take associated with step 6 and step 7 are as simple as those two paragraphs imply. But what happens over time is the directions are simple, but the depth and the surrender associated with those is ongoing. And in the 12 and 12, as it says, is designed to help broaden and deepen my understanding. Little essays to help broaden and deepen my understanding. It's not the how-to book. It's the we've been doing it for a while now book, and here's what that has been looking like and feeling like. And but I get wonderful points of view out of step 6 and 7 in the book. But it's one of the real bait and switch moments in Alcoholics Anonymous at step 6 and 7. If you're new, I kind of hate to spoil the surprise for you, but I arrive at step 6 and 7, having done this inventory, and it says, and it describes humility. And 6 and 7, as all the steps are, but I think step 7 particularly is defined by humility. And it says that and one of the descriptions of humility in the 5th step in the 12 and 12 is a clear understanding of who and what I am right now, coupled with a desire to be what I could be. And that's an important pairing. I'm standing in front of you as with knowing as much about me as I have ever known. And there's a lot of the stuff there is uncomfortable to have discovered. Ooh, I wish that wasn't true about me, but I see it now in a way that I couldn't see it before. But if that's not for me to beat myself up with. This is good news if it's coupled with a desire to be what I could be. Otherwise, I'm always getting ready to have a good day, I've spent so much of my life pre and post sobriety getting ready to have a good day. Wait till I grow a little. Wait till I'm 34. Did you hear that stuff Peter was talking about? I can't wait to lay that stuff on him in a couple of years, right? I can't wait till I grow a little bit more. I can't wait till I'm a little bit better. I can't wait till I'm a little bit thinner. I can't wait till I got a little more hair on my head. I can't wait till something's different. And this is saying today's the day. Today is the day I want to have a good day. There's a lot about me that I hope continues to change and grow and evolve. I just don't want to wait till it happens to have a good day. And the way for that to, and what happens is if I am still acting and living on self-will, then it's a pretty uncomfortable time. But when I feel that I'm being compliant, the 12 says that God won't render us white as snow without my cooperation. If I feel like I'm cooperating, then I can be comfortable today knowing I'm moving in the right direction, that I'm willing to continue to grow along spiritual lines. But I arrive there, I end up at that 6th step, and the book says, so if we've admitted these things are objectionable, so I actually, it's kind of interesting, at least to me, I come out of that and I kind of have a list of stuff, and I go, I've decided that's objectionable. But then I get to the 7th step, and Peter made the point at the 7th step, I say, God, you can have all of me, good and bad. Whoa, I've kind of made an inventory of things I'd like God to take. In fact, when I do that, I'm playing God. So when I get to that 7th step, the humility that is required is not just the things that I am clear that are troublesome and bothersome to me and probably hurt other people and go, yeah, I'd really like to be free of this. But what about if I said, here's the whole package? I'm doubling down on the 3rd step. I'm doubling down now. I was kind of still hanging on to that alcohol thing coming into step 3. Now we have looked at causes and conditions. We've gone beyond the bottles, which were but a symptom, and now I'm putting me in the game. And I'm saying, do with me as you will. Take all of me, good and bad, which implies I don't know which is which. That I'm not in charge of what's good and bad, and I'm certainly not in charge of how God wants to use me. Peter has made that point several times. I'll go where you want me to go. I'll say what you want me to say, and I'll do what you want me to do. Now, implied in that, when I say it, and probably when Peter says it, and when we're talking, is I'll go do your work. I'll go do some good stuff. Maybe God wants me to be a bad example today. In fact, I'm probably here as the counterbalance to Peter this weekend. So you can see the good and the bad. A measuring stick. But see, I don't know what's going to be useful. I don't know what's going to be helpful. I want to try to do God's will. Doesn't mean I'm doing God's will. And, as we often do, God sponsors and says, Steve, how do I know whether I'm doing God's will? And I said, man, that's too big a question for me to imply that I know what God's will is. But what I have is a relationship with a power greater than myself. And what my relationship tells me is that the God of my understanding, of my conception, which you've allowed me to have, is that God wouldn't be influenced by fear, by pride, by sloth, by envy. God wouldn't do or not do anything because he's afraid. He wouldn't do or not do anything out of pride. He wouldn't do or not do anything out of lust, out of greed, out of envy. So those human characteristics that I have, God doesn't have those characteristics, so they would not. And that's the difference between my humanness and my human imperfection and that perfection which is God. And I'm always going to be somewhere on the scale. The 12 and 12 says that how to measure my defective character. It says the measure of our defects of character is the distance between God's intended use and my misuse. And I'm always going to be somewhere between God's intended use, and I'm just trying to stay somewhere on this side of 50, I don't want to be always over at, DEFCON 5. But can I move over here and be moving more and more toward God's intended use for those God-given instincts of sex, society, security? And use them to good purpose, those things which should be my assets that turned into liabilities. The 12 and 12 says that it is not surprising that we have these desires in abundance. We have been overserved in sex, society, security. We have an overabundance of these, and I'm trying to somehow get them more into alignment with God's intended use. And that means but I'm going to do it from a human perspective. And my sponsor says, Steve, these steps aren't where you get perfect. They're where you find enough humility to live with your imperfection. And that is not an excuse to not try to do better. It's just a recognition that I'm never going to be perfect. It says we must aim for perfection. That's my job, to aim for perfection and settle for patient improvement. And see, that means I'm not in a spiritual race with you either. I'm not in a spiritual race with Peter. When I hear Peter say some things, I go, oh, man. Look, I'm often behind the microphone, yet sit in the front row for the Friday night speaker or the Saturday night speaker at an AA conference, and I'm listening and thinking, geez, I am the worst AA member that ever drew a breath. That guy's driving 150 miles both ways to his corrections commitment. And I'm just thrilled that Zoom is here. And yet, you know what I mean? And so this comparative, when we live life, which I think I certainly did and do, but we fall victim to living life in a comparative, and we always lose in a comparative. And AA is just asking me to measure myself against me, the me that got here. How am I doing? I got to tell you, I wish some of you people knew me longer, because you don't know how well I'm doing. Boy, I'm not. And I came down one night a number of years ago. I was at home, and I'd been upstairs and came down to join my wife and daughter for dinner. This about 20 years ago. And I felt so good, and I said at dinner, I said, God and AA have changed me. And they said, we hope he's not done. And I hope you're not done too, right? I'm not a finished product. And that's the good news, right? Back in the story, Keys to the Kingdom, it says that we do not outgrow AA because it has benefits that last for a lifetime. And those benefits are immeasurable. So the good news is there's no ceiling in the spiritual world. And we are constantly shedding, hopefully, and then those bonds tighten up, but then they loosen up, and we go along. The defect of character that I show up with, and again, I outlined it with behavior in my fourth step, right? I'm telling you what I did or how, and my role in things. But I mentioned earlier, and it is my personally held belief, is that I need to focus on the defect, not on the behavior. I need to act better. I need to try to do better. But I want to take this defect that is causing that behavior and really and humbly invite God to relieve me of that. And then I'm not in charge of what it happens. I was at a conference at Sandy B at a men's retreat, the Far Corners retreat, when he started that. And Peter, you may have gone. It's the first one he had done, and I go. And for those of you who heard Sandy, I think one of the certainly Mount Rushmore guys of AA for me. But he was giving a talk on step 6 and 7 that was just over my head. And later on, I was privileged to go on a walk with him and Peter's sponsor, Bob, and while they were talking and I'm listening. But I was there at that retreat because I was very disappointed in me for some stuff at about 15 years sober. And I was wearing it pretty heavy. And I started talking to them about that while we're out there. And I said, Sandy, you said something I'm having trouble reconciling. He had said, next time you're ready to indulge one of your defects of character, he said, don't resist it. Just invite God in. And I was wrestling with the personal responsibility aspect versus handing this stuff over to God, right? Where's my role in this? And he's talking. He says, well, Steve, he said, let's say you or somebody is watching pornography. He said, what's that process usually look like? And I said, well, I don't know, but I've heard what I've heard, Sandy. And he said, and again, this isn't a pro or con, but he said what often happens, and you can pick your activity that is an outgrowth of the defect. He said what often happens is a man or woman goes in their room and closes and locks the door. They pull the shades, dim the lights, turn on the computer, and then do whatever they do. And he said, and they've left God on the other side of the door. And then we're done, and we come out, we turn the lights on, we open the shades, we unlock the door, and we come up and go, okay, God, I'm back. Let's go to the meeting. Let's go to the chili cook-off. I'm speaking tonight. Keep me busy so I don't think about that. And he said, look, Steve, I'm just saying, hey, God, let's go watch some porn. I said, Sandy, that's not the menage a trois I had in mind. And but you're bringing, and that, it sounds absurd and it's comical, but it's a fact that what happens is I get to an area or a piece of my life where I don't let God in, and he's saying that this is the humility to really invite God in to everything. Come on. And he said, I believe what will happen is some of that stuff will fall away, just like your relationship with alcohol. It says in there, if we've had this perfect release from alcohol, why can't I get this perfect release from my defects of character? He said, it's the riddle of our existence. And the reason the 12 and 12 says is because usually we get here after alcohol has beat us into submission, into reasonableness. It has, and it cracks me open to a point that I'm willing to allow and to God to enter. But some of these defects of character I'm still trying to manage. If the great obsession of every abnormal drinker is that one day he will control and enjoy his drinking, I would put forward the idea that in many cases I have suffered from the idea that one day I will control and enjoy my defects of character. That just like my drinking, I don't want to get in, but I want to indulge, I want to dabble. So if I really invite God in, this thing might be taken away. This might be off the table. I want to leave the door cracked open. So that's me managing my life rather than truly inviting God in. What happens is so I go around, like we talked earlier, doing cosmetic surgery. And what you guys are encouraging me to do, if I got a toaster that's burning the toast every day, right? Every day I come in, the toast is burned. And I'm scraping the toast off. I'm putting butter and jam on the toast to make it palatable. But the 6th and 7th step would say, quit working on the making the toast palatable and work on the toaster. Work on the broken toaster. Well, here I keep trying to manage my behavior. And that's not a bad thing. I'm supposed to try to act better. But the real work is to work on my defective character. And one of the ways we do that is that we, you guys have been telling me since I got to AA that I can't think my way into right actions. I got to act my way into right thinking. If I were in the therapeutic world, they would call it cognitive behavioral therapy. But if I go to Kroger, to the grocery store, and there's someone in front of me in the express lane with 17 items instead of 10, and I know because I have counted them, and I can't take it, I just snatch her up because it would have to be a small female for me to take a bold move like that. But I snatch her up and say, that's it, get over in the right lane and make a scene. And I get to AA, and you guys say, Steve, we just don't act that way. That's not appropriate. So next time I'm in line, and she's got 17 items, and I know because I'm still counting them, but I don't say anything. And I'm about to implode from not saying anything. I'm sitting there, my lip is bleeding. I am tensed up. I am self-restraint, right? But I don't say anything, and you guys say that's an improvement. But I'm not free of the defect of character. I'm just not acting on the defect. I'm still suffering from the defect. And you tell me to keep doing that, and one day I will find myself in line and not even count the items. And if that ever happens, I'll report back to you. But it's better, right? It's better. These are the things I'm supposed to begin. And I don't like the act as if, but I'm trying to be the best version of me. And what was counterintuitive becomes intuitive. In the Bill story, he said uncommon sense or common sense became uncommon sense. We are changed. It's not because I'm a better guy. I get changed. It may be rewiring. I don't know about the receptors up there. And, there's, again, what we're seeing more and more is that the clinical world and the spiritual world are just intersecting all the time in the most positive ways that are affirming for both. And they're complementary, not at odds with each other most of the time. But so I got to work on the toaster, not keep trying to put jam and butter on the toast to make it palatable. This is the point at which it says that maybe I have been making, in fact, it says I will discover through this whole process that we've been going through that I have been making unreasonable demands upon you, upon me, and upon God. And if you're keeping count, that's everybody. There's nobody left for me to be unreasonably demanding of. All of you disappoint me, God disappoints me, and I always disappoint me. But the way I handle my disappointment is to blame you for it, to deflect attention from me. And it says our demands, this is where and it says we all know the difference in a simple request and a demand. And I will tell you that I know the difference in a simple request and a demand, but I don't always notice when the request morphed into a demand when I wasn't paying attention. When that thing I hoped might happen must happen. When that thing I hoped won't happen can't happen. It says this is not a life of having our demands met. It's a life of lessening our demands. As I get freer of the bondage of self, my target for happiness gets larger and larger. And my demands just paint me into a corner. If I've got a list of things that have to happen or can't happen, then I'm held hostage to those until one or the other happens. So I'll end with another bad story. But I was at a conference, a weekend like this in Toronto about 15 years ago. And Peter wasn't there. There wasn't a Peter, so they were just stuck with just me. And we break for lunch. But obviously I'm the high authority, right? Because I got the microphone. And we break for lunch, and we're sitting there, and they came and took our order. We were at round tables like these here, and they took my order, and I ordered a cheeseburger. And they took the guy, I noticed the guy next to me ordered a club sandwich, and then they went all the way around. And a little while later, they brought our food out, and they gave me a cheeseburger, and they gave the guy next to me a cheeseburger. And this is kind of your Zen moment for the weekend if you've been waiting on it. I noticed the guy starts eating the cheeseburger. And I said, man, I thought you ordered a club sandwich. Listen to this. This is unbelievable the way he responded. He said, I did, but they brought me a cheeseburger. Yeah, that's it. But I wasn't done. I said, brother, you don't have to live like that. I said, we can get you a club sandwich. I said, lack of power, my ass. We're getting a club sandwich, and I'm trying to get the server back over. And he said, no, Steve, I'm good. I'm good. I said, no, man. I said, he said, Steve. And understand, he wasn't just eating the damned old cheeseburger because that's what life had served him. He enjoyed the cheeseburger, and that would have been perfectly okay for him to have said, you know what, ma'am, I ordered a club sandwich, and she would have gone, oh, I'm sorry, and gone back, and a few minutes later they would have brought him a club sandwich, and that would have been fine. But wasn't his life better because he was okay with the cheeseburger? And see, what I will tell you is I go through life with the world getting my order wrong, and it ain't okay. And I haven't even placed my order. I'm going through life requiring you to know what I need and exactly what portions. And I don't know that, but that's why I'm regularly disappointed. That's why I am overly demanding of you and of God and of me. And as I navigate through with these defects of character and put them on the table, what happens is as I become more in touch with who I am more comfortable with you. The more grace I can give myself, the more grace I can give you. The more grace I can give you, the more grace I can give myself. When I'm a harsh judge of myself, it is necessary for me to figure out what's wrong with you so I can look that direction. But this is, again, where we begin to enter the world of the Spirit, where love and tolerance, as we will get to later, but it says we never thought of making kindness, courtesy, justice, and love the basis for daily living. What if that was my baseline when I left the house in the morning? Kindness, courtesy, justice, love, rather than judgment toward you and judgment toward me and judgment towards God. All right, we'll break. Thanks.